all the way fucked up. I be messed up. Yeah, I want.
Not all 5G networks are created equal.
This got me fucked up.
I'm not saying Davis would turn the series around, but they definitely could have used another experienced big man who could make him work. As for Bender, well, his first few years in Indiana did not look so good. The doctors discovered he had some knee pain that would not go away, and it forced him to sit out so many games early on. While the Pacers were very eager to give him the opportunity to lead the franchise, he just couldn't stay on the floor long enough to do anything. It's not like he wasn't given the chance, the Pacers were trying to give him the chance. In his first 2 seasons, he missed 81 games, and in the games he actually played in, he struggled a lot. His only decent season came in 2002. Bender averaged a career-high 21 minutes per game, with a career-high in points and rebounds. Obviously, he didn't have the impact we thought he would by now, but he still became a valuable rotation player. That's better than nothing. It was a step forward. However, looking at the grand scheme of things, thus far, Bender's career has been a colossal failure. Injuries aside, even when healthy, he really hasn't shown much. That versatile skill set, that silky smooth jump shot, that guard-like mentality in the body of a center, it looks like he left his talents back in high school. Occasionally, he would explode for like 15 points, but that was once in a blue moon. Very rarely did we see him utilize his complete package. But whenever he did make a fantastic play, for 10 seconds, he made the doubters have a sliver of hope. Alas, that was all he had. Hope. That 2001-2 season would be his best season in the league. Afterwards, it went downhill. Not like he was ever on the hill to begin with. The interesting thing is, it's not like Bender wasn't trying. I know with a lot of busts, there's a clear lack of motivation and effort. Or maybe they get into some off-court problems. Those setbacks are the most common reasons why some highly touted prospects fail. But for Bender, that wasn't even the case. To an excerpt from Mark Montiel, he stated, "He fooled people. He was so quiet and so oft injured. During his so brief playing career with the Pacers, people assumed he wasn't very smart or motivated. Turns out, they were wrong. He had a vertical jump of nearly 40 inches and unlimited shooting range. But there were questions about him too. He was just 18 years old, ultra skinny, and unknown to the Pacers, had bad knees." It wasn't a lack of motivation that set him back. Bender worked his tail off every summer. And when he was injured, he spent hours upon hours just studying film, to try to get better in any way possible. Even prior to joining the NBA, the scouts knew his work ethic was not the problem. In that 2002 season I mentioned earlier, Mark Montiel reinforced this notion. Quote, "His game still needed refinement, but he was coming. I recall certain highlight moments, such as when he took one dribble from the three-point line and dunked, or got the ball so high above the rim that your jaw plunged. One dribble from the three-point line and dunked. That's something that Durant popularized, and now Giannis is known for doing it too. We're not even spooked by it anymore. It happened to do that. It was unprecedented. Sad got drafted draft class in '99. It makes him look worse. Take a look here. Every player drafted in the top 10 was fantastic. Some of them became all-stars. Others, like Lamar Odom, Andre Miller, Jason Terry, even Wally Szczerbiak, they all became very good starters. Out of everyone in the top 10, Bender was by far very good starter. Andre Miller. Look here. Every player drafted in the top 10 was
Matter from all Hall of Famers though.
Some of them became all-stars. Others, like Lamar Odom, Andre Miller, Jason Terry, even Wally Szczerbiak, they all became very good starters. Out of everyone in the top 10, Bender was by far the worst. On the bright side, at least he still got paid. In the summer of '02, the Pacers projected he would continue to improve and build upon that somewhat successful season. So they signed him to a 4-year, $28 million extension. Ultimately, for the Pacers, Bender never got better. It was also discovered he had a medical condition in his knees, hence why the pain would not go away. He spent years doing rehab and recovery, but to no avail. In the following seasons, he played 46 games, and then 21 games, and then 7, and 2. Rick Carlisle, the Pacers coach at the time, worked closely and diligently with Bender. He was one of his favorite players. The Pacers were very patient with him and never waived him, even though it was clear he should not be taking up a roster spot. Carlisle talked about Bender's remorseful journey. "I'm sad for him, for his family. A situation like this couldn't happen to a more undeserving person. Jonathan really is a great kid. It'll be one of the questions when you look back in history. How good could this guy have been? I'm not sure that there was any limit to his potential. It was just not meant to be." By 2006, he was out of the NBA. But he did have a short comeback moment in 2009 with the New York Knicks. That only lasted 25 games until his final retirement. While most former NBA busts fade into the distance, Bender was determined to help other players with similar knee problems as him. Post-retirement, he actually developed the JBIT MedPro, a medical device that takes stress off the knees and strengthens the surrounding muscles. He's dabbled in entrepreneurship and business, being involved in numerous charities as well. So at least he seems to be doing well, despite his career not panning out. And that's all, folks. Over the years, I've heard some people say that Bender got drafted way too high. But he really wasn't. He was that talented. He impressed a lot of folks prior to the draft. But it was during a time when high school players might have been too overhyped. Some teams wanted to take a huge gamble and find the next Kobe or the next...
Lucidchart presents LucidSpark, the online whiteboard that helps teams bring their best ideas to life.
Generally speaking, NBA players are the top 1% of athletes in the entire world. Like with most professional sports, you need to have the talent, you need to have hard work, but you also need an exceptional amount of physical tools to make everything work. Of course, not all players are built the same. Some are overweight, some are short, some can barely even jump off the ground, but still, they made it to the NBA for a reason. In this video, we're going to take a look at some NBA players, past and present, who were blessed with ridiculous physical measurements, to the point where it's hard to believe they're even true. When it comes to genetics, these guys are the top 1% of the top 1%. They've measured in at the absolute extreme. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and without further ado, let's get started. Also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe. If you like the content, drop a sub or a like, and thank you so much for the support. Donovan Mitchell. He recorded arguably the most ridiculous wingspan measurement ever. At just 6'1", Mitchell has a wingspan of 6'10". That's 9 inches longer than his height. Percentage-wise, his wingspan is 12.3% longer than his height. For comparison's sake, Kevin Durant is listed at 6'10", with a wingspan of 7'5". That's only 8.5% longer. Kawhi Leonard is 6'7", with a 7'3" wingspan, which is 10% longer. When it comes to sheer proportions, Mitchell is a freaking pterodactyl. His long arms and broad frame allows him to play the 2 spot effectively despite being undersized. It's funny because when most undersized shooting guards come into the NBA, there's always concerns if they can actually play that position, or if they'd be forced to move to point guard. For Mitchell, a few people had doubts, but for the most part, everyone knew his long arms would mitigate his height. Here's another comparison. Both Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were 6'6", with a 6'11" wingspan. They're the ideal shooting guards when it comes to height, but their wingspan is barely longer than Mitchell's. Speaking of Kawhi Leonard, we gotta talk about the size of his hands. There's a rough correlation between hand size and height. As most of you know, the biggest hands typically belong to the biggest players. Think of Shaq, or Mutombo, or Tim Duncan. But Kawhi Leonard, clocking in at just 6'7", has hands that are as big as Shaq's, and bigger than most other big men, measuring in at 9.75 inches long and 11.25 inches wide. His massive mitts are a huge part of his game, allowing him to have such a tighter control of the ball, and he could make plays that people with ordinary hands could not. Michael Jordan was also known to have massive hands, reportedly measuring in at the same length but slightly wider than Kawhi's. Giannis has hands that are also both longer and wider than Kawhi, although he's taller too. His 12-inch width is ridiculous, which is the same width as Shaq's hands. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we've always got some extreme measurements at the other end. These guys have ridiculously small hands, comparatively. The most prominent player we've associated this with was Kwame Brown. You remember all those times the media made fun of him for having small hands, and that was the reason why he had so much trouble catching passes? Stone Hands Kwame was one of the first NBA memes to ever exist. However, we don't know his exact hand measurements. That was never released to the public, as far as I know. There are some other players with very small hands in proportion to their heights. The Morris twins are the most notable example. They're both around 6'9", but have a hand length of just 8.2 inches. For comparison, the average guy in America has a hand length of 7.6 inches, but at 5'10". Despite being nearly a foot taller, the Morris twins have pretty damn small hands. Anthony Davis is another one, listed at 6'10", but his hands are only 8.5 inches wide, hence why we've never seen him palm a basketball. Of course, this hasn't stopped him from becoming a superstar. The best shooters in NBA history tend to have smaller hands. Next up, Zion Williamson. Now, I put Zion on this list because his entire body is an absolute freak of nature. From head to toe, he's a physical specimen at 6'7", 284 pounds. That makes him top 5 in the current NBA in weight, despite being significantly shorter than everyone else in the top 5. Not only that, but he reportedly has a 45-inch vertical, which was recorded before his freshman year at Duke. That's freaking insane for how much he weighs. Pelicans VP David Griffin stated that Zion has a special type of body. He gains muscle mass and gains weight so fast, no one's ever dealt with anyone like that before. He can be 274 pounds with 8.5% body fat, and he could be 280 pounds with 9% body fat. He's just a very unique body type, and certainly from a physics perspective. While we're on the topic of body fat, over the years, this is a metric that sparked controversy, as most people believe the measurements are inaccurate. Some players have a body fat percentage that's so low, like literally lower than professional bodybuilders. I'm talking about sub 5%. Apparently, some players are even sub 3%. According to NBA.com's Draft Combine dashboard, in 2018, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander clocked in at 3% body fat. The scary part is, Shai doesn't even have the lowest. There are numerous players who measured in at lower than 3%, the lowest of which came from Dante Jones. At a pre-draft workout in 2003, he recorded a body fat percentage of 2.6%, the lowest recorded number in NBA history. Now let's look at standing reach. Taco Fall is a player that only comes around once in a generation. He's absolutely massive, and we know he's extremely tall, listed at 7'5". That's impressive in itself, but it's his standing reach that, well, stands out. He's got a standing reach of 10 feet 2 inches, meaning he could touch the rim without even jumping. Very few players, even around his height, could do that. Another player who can was the late Manute Bol. At 7'7", he had a standing reach of 10 feet 5 inches. Now let's take a look at a fun one, the highest verticals in NBA history. This category is a bit muffled, because in the old days, the verticals of players were not actually measured or recorded in any database. So a lot of it is just